Oh my god, it's Vox. Okay, so yes. This is the first thing that I have to like start talking about. Obviously, I did ask Vox Akuma of you guys' timeline, of you guys' world, permission to be able to use him as a representative, but that is not really Vox Akuma. If I'm being completely honest, I don't even remember what he looked like anymore. It's been so long since I saw him. I saw him a bit after this, but it wasn't always in good. It wasn't always in the best style. But that is my real brother from my timeline, Tonitrus. Basically, where I come from, it's like a solar punky kind of world. People are expected to behave a certain way, and there's a lot of banned media, a lot of... You're not really allowed to be yourself. You're not really allowed to enjoy different types of media. You have to all be very vanilla, very boring. This is the first one, the first scene. Me and Tonitrus when we were kids, hanging out, playing video games, enjoying snacks. Basically, he was very much my hero when I was a child. He taught me everything I knew. He guided me at the beginning to become an archivist. He was a very free-thinking person who had a lot of thoughts about how the world should be and how we should interact with one another, how we should treat one another. And he was never afraid of embracing the things that he loved and being passionate about what he cared about. Unfortunately, well, he was very good at hiding everything he did online and not getting caught by the council. He taught me how to do a couple of things, and I did not do such a good job. And one day, the council caught on to us, tracked some of what we were doing online, and he took the blame for everything, rather than let me be arrested for it. So he was sent to what is known as, basically, what was the word for it? I can't even remember anymore. It's a something camp. There's something... God, I can't even remember. It's fine. Basically, he was taken away from me. He eventually did come back, but he wasn't my brother anymore. It was his body, but not him. Whatever they did to him, it was just never the brother that I knew again. With that said, our second scene, which actually in the Enshrouding music video comes before that, is just how my life went after that. After my brother was taken away, after I realized I couldn't be myself in public anymore, I decided I had to hide myself from everyone. So throughout my teenage years, I basically just hid everything. I didn't want to deal with anyone. Not to mention the fact that my neurological condition started to come in, so suddenly the doctors decided they didn't want to deal with my shit. So instead of, you know, trying to fix me and manage my pain, they just decided, hey, any of the parts that are causing you too much pain and discomfort and making you cry and scream and shout in public, we'll just cut them all off. So I got a respirator to control my vagus nerve to make sure I never had any moments where I felt like I couldn't breathe. It also made sure that my stomach didn't continuously ache because the vagus nerve controls all those kinds of things. My arms were replaced and my legs were replaced just to buy me a little more time and so that I wouldn't get in anybody else's way, essentially. They didn't want society to be interrupted, essentially, by my existence. That's the kind of world I came from. Fun times, fun times. I probably could have actually kept my extremities for a lot longer with some actual management, but that would cause them trouble and have them deal with me, so... I just kind of began hiding in my own world, and that comes up a lot in the music video. And so that was basically my teenage years. Just me hiding from everyone else. I started to get super into like fan fiction. I started creating my own little characters. I didn't really have any real friends, but I essentially created my own friends in my head. People who I thought would be really cool. bit of a manic pixie dream girl, a bit of a big old himbo, people that could pull me out of my shell. Honestly, I was kind of hoping there would be somebody else in that world, somebody who would see past the mask, see past the stoicism, and want to know who I was on the inside. But I mean, I'm sure everybody was wearing their own masks. Nobody really wanted to show their true selves. That's very much how life in those times were. So we just went by our day to day. A lot of other people had friends, but I was not so good at showing it. There are a lot of things about myself that just did not fly with that society. Could not love who I wanted to love, could not be who I wanted to be, could not enjoy what I wanted to enjoy. And so I just shut myself off from it. I built walls. I enshrouded myself. I built a cocoon around myself, hoping that someday somebody would see through it. Someday I would get my own version of Rhinoa, or Quistis, or Zell. Somebody who would break through and say, hey, I see you. You can be yourself around me. But it never happened. So, moving on from there, even once I dropped out of school, which I did as soon as I hit age 18, I just really didn't have any goals in life. I didn't have much else to do. I was a very intelligent person, so I managed to get through school without any studying, without any problems. I began working like whichever job I could essentially get. I started as like a bar back. I then was promoted to become a mixologist, as they call it, which is really just the same as a bartender, but a fancy way of saying it that makes it sound nicer. But yeah, I essentially would just work whatever job I could. As soon as anybody started getting too close to me, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. At that point, I'd enshrouded myself too much. I had thought of it as like building a cocoon around myself so that someday I would be able to emerge, a metamorphosis kind of thing, reveal myself for who I was to the world. I just kept telling myself, tomorrow, 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 it'll happen tomorrow. I just floated around and I did a lot of jobs. I mean, I've talked about a lot of them on stream. I've talked about the fact that I was also a kitchen assistant. And again, I worked my way up to sous chef then. But just anytime anybody got too close to me, anytime people started approaching me and trying to hang out with me, at that point, I'd become so closed off that the mask was essentially the real me. I was scared of people. By that point, I was scared to reveal who I actually was beneath. I would rather just stay safe in my own cocoon rather than get to know people, rather than embrace people. And so I just kind of gave up on finding anyone who understood me, finding anyone who could spend time with me. And so that's how my early adulthood went. I don't recommend it. And again, I would imagine other people coming into the bar. I would imagine people who had more unique stories. Rather than people who lived in the same society, people who could live outside of the society, people who came from fantastical locations. I gave up on the real life. I gave up on hanging out with real people. But I still imagined like people coming into the bar and telling me their stories. Being the songbird of paradise, a solar dragon, a fucking penguin. Or just someone confident enough to actually be themselves. Someone confident enough to give that kind of energy to everyone else around them. Someone who lifts everybody else up and makes them feel more comfortable in their own skin. The kind of things that I needed, but at that point I was just resisting. Okay, enough sadness. We're done with that. Because this is the happy time. This is our happy space, and that's all that matters.